Could you repeat the first question for me?
Absolutely. So the first question I asked was basically this. How would you respond to someone who argues that applying Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 directly to modern nations, like you mentioned North Korea, might blur the line between Israel's unique covenant role and the role of the church today? In other words, how would you biblically defend that continuity?
Huh, that doesn't make a sense at all because Deuteronomy chapter 29 clearly states that the covenant God had made with the Israelites remain relevant to those who are now with them, meaning to their descendants. And Galatians chapter 3 verse 29 clearly also states that we are by faith the heirs of Abraham. Therefore, we also belong to the lineage of the Israel, so which makes the covenant made with them still relevant to us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I totally see where you're coming from by bringing in Deuteronomy 29 and Galatians 3:29. It definitely helps to show that there's a continuity of the covenant promises extending to those who are by faith considered Abraham's heirs. So that's a solid biblical defense you've got there. It sounds like you're saying that because the covenant was meant to be perpetual and inclusive of all who come to faith, it's not out of line to apply those covenant principles more broadly, even to modern contexts. Let's keep going from there. Does that line of reasoning feel right to you, or is there another angle you want to explore?
That objection doesn't really hold because Deuteronomy chapter 29 explicitly states that covenant God made with Israel was not limited only to those physically present at Sinai, but also extends to their descendants, to those who were not here today. In other words, the covenant was intentionally framed as transgenerational. Moreover, Galatians chapter 3:29 makes it clear that those who belong to Christ are Abraham's offspring and heirs according to the promise. This means that covenant membership is ultimately defined by faith, not ethnicity. By faith, believers are grafted into the lineage of Abraham, therefore into the covenant framework given to Israel. So if we truly are heirs of Abraham by faith, then it follows logically and biblically that covenant principles, blessings for obedience and curses for disobedience, remain relevant to us today. Therefore, applying its principles beyond ancient Israel is not a misapplication, but a faithful reading of Scripture's own logic of continuity.